Okay. Let's see. We're on the bottom of page 254. Bottom of page 254. Now, let's start off here on the second to last paragraph. It says, yes, you have come to understand that the rulers of the people have produced every pagan holiday which has been mentioned since the beginning. Okay, everything has been instituted from the very beginning. And remember, all this stuff started off long ago. It's nothing new. It's not some new holiday that people come up with. But these things have been worshipped from the very beginning. This is when Yahweh said, don't worship the gods, okay? Because the gods are take over the imagination of the mind and completely cause you to go against Yahweh's word. Now, as it said, because the deceived people in this world are actually worshiping Satan, the devil, okay, the god of this world. Now remember that. That's her title. She is the god of this world, okay? And they have become confused in spiritual understanding and actually become insane in their minds and violent in their actions and behavior as a result. Now that's what God worship does. That's what worshiping the gods does. Worshiping Yahweh brings peace and gives peace to everybody. And that's the reason why the world, you see it in the shape that it's in today. It says, after the Apostle Yochanan has shown these simple symbolic facts in Revelation 17, 1 through 2, he's then shown these symbolic facts in Revelation 17, 3 through 8. Now, he says here, so he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet-colored beast full of the names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. That word blasphemy, okay? The word blasphemy, according to Thayer's, the name is used for everything which the name covers. Everything, the thought or the feeling of which is aroused by the mind by mentioning, hearing, or remembering. The name, in other words, for one's rank, authority, interest, pleasure, command, excellencies, or deeds. Okay, so you can see the name of blasphemy is in their actions, is in their deeds, it's in their very authority and stuff that they portray. Okay, all this is encompassed in these names of blasphemy. It's not like you go through and start thinking about all these different names that they use and stuff, but it's the fact that it's the actions, it's the teachings, remember, of this pagan system that we're looking at here. We see a lot of unrest, of course, among the European nations against the Muslims, just as Malachi Martin wrote about, remember, where he said that Mary would make war against those who don't worship her. And so the Catholic Church has been going throughout the world, stirring things up, through the Jesuit system and so forth, causing all these uprests everywhere and all these uprisings, and you see the things that are taking place. Now, it's only been given to Yahweh's house in detail. These things, Malachi Martin, you just don't hear people talk about Malachi Martin, his writings and stuff, but remember, he was a Jesuit, he was an insider, and he wrote these things down, but yet the house of Yahweh is the only one who's able to take his writings and decipher them and see really what they're saying and actually have the understanding to know what he said and to realize what he said and actually understand these things. So we're the only one who understands this. It hasn't been given to anyone because, remember, the wicked will not understand, right? Now, this is something that this was recently, but Pope Francis was welcomed by religious leaders during an interreligious meetings in Colombo, Sri Lanka. Now, this interreligious meetings, okay, remember, she's going after her daughters. She wants to pull everybody back to her and stuff. And so you see in the Pope making this visit in Asia. He just went to the Philippines where they estimated 6 million people gathered together to be with him, to watch him and so forth. But he just went to Asia as well. So on his first trip to Asia there, he says, among those present were representatives of various religions present in the country, including Buddhism, Hinduism, the Muslims, and Christianity. And the chairman of the Catholic National Commission for Interreligious Dialogue and Ecumenism welcomed the Holy Father for his visit to the country. And here's what he said. Most Holy Father. Most Holy Father. If anybody had any sense of what that is saying right there, they would not say it, would they? Okay. What is holy? You remember what holy is? Holy is kadeshim. Okay. He's saying, oh, you most great homosexual sodomite in the world. That's what he's calling him. He's the papa. He's the papa of sodomites. Because that's what the word holy means in this case. It has nothing to do with Yahweh. Holiness in Yahweh's eyes is keeping the laws of Yahweh. Holiness, according to the Catholic Church, is the Kadeshim. Okay, the Kadeshim that was the sodomites. Okay, they separated themselves. And that's what he's saying, a most holy Father. All right-thinking people clearly observed. Now, within the short period of your pontificate, you have impressed the world's society and have captured the hearts of millions of people of various religions and ethnic denominations. And he has, hasn't he? He is Papa. He's the most holy Papa. And he goes around kissing the babies and visiting the sick and all of this stuff. He's really made a super big impact. I mean, look, he even made his picture on the cover of the Rolling Stone, you know. And he's also the man of the year and so forth, you know. So he's really made a huge, huge impact on people. Now, Prophet Daniel talked about that as well. Now, remember what he says here. He says, you have impressed the world's society and captured the hearts of many millions of various denominations. Daniel said the very same thing when he talked about the Pope. In Daniel 8, verse 19 through 25, it says, and he said, remember this. He says, behold, I will make you know what will be in the last end of the indignation. For at the time appointed, the end will be. So Daniel was talking about our days, the very last, the end times. He says, I'm going to let you know what the last end of the indignation is going to be. And remember, he saw that vision in the night. He said, the ram which you saw, which had 2 horns, are the kings of the Media and Persia. And the he-goat is the king of Greece, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Now, because it broke off, whereas 4 stood in its place, 4 kingdoms will stand up out of that nation, but not of his power. The 4 kingdoms will stand up out of that nation. Okay? That was the 4 generals. Now, that ram there, that was the Grecian Empire, okay? That was Alexander the Great. And the 4 kingdoms were the 4 generals who came and distributed his kingdom. So in the last days of their kingdom, notice. Now notice he says, first from verse 22, he says, it broke off and then 4 stood in its place. Okay, so that kingdom, Media went away, and then Grecian came in. Stood in this place, and 4 kingdoms will arise out of that nation, but not of his own power. And in the last days of their kingdom, notice, the last part of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their fullness, the king of fierce expression, you remember that word, fierce expression, it means forced immorality. He will force immorality upon people. Now, in the last days, remember he says, I'm going to show you what the indignation is, okay? He says, in the last days of their kingdom, when the transgressions have reached their fullness. Remember, the scriptures tells you that sins have reached their peak in this last time period. So when the transgressors, the sinning of their fullness, is in their fullness, and the king of fierce expression, or forcing immorality and understanding dark sentences, skilled in trickery and deception, will stand up, okay? He is very skilled in deception. And that's what you see him taking place now, when he's going through pretending like he really cares about the people and are taking care of them and really desires to make sure that they're taken care of. He's very, very deceiving. He's skilled in trickery and deception. He's going to stand up, notice, in verse 24. And his power will be mighty, but not through his own power. Remember, okay, Pope Francis is a puppet. Okay, he's the puppet of the Vatican. The Vatican is the ones who are behind him in the power that is there. And, of course, Satan is the one who's behind the Vatican. So it's not his own power. But notice what he's going to do. He will destroy astoundingly. And it is astounding the way that you see him act. The way that you see people bow down to him and look at what he does and just so praise him so very much for what he does. The news media, especially the big three, you know, in American television. I mean, when you hear them talk about the Pope, they just got nothing but praises about this guy. You know, you can tell that they're all Catholic. And his power will be mighty, but not through his own power. And he will destroy astoundingly. And he will succeed, notice. He's going to be successful in what he does. And he's going to practice these things. And he will destroy the mighty and the holy people. Remember, the holiness. He's going to go after any people who have any form of holiness. Okay? And notice, it's through his policy. Notice, he's got a policy. He's a politician in him because he is the king over the geopolitical system, remember. Okay? And through his policy, he will cause craft, deceit, and fraud. You know, they're always talking about, you know, recently they were talking about the money laundering like taking place in the Vatican and so forth. And it will succeed in his hand. He's got the power, and he's going to use it, and he uses it very successfully. Okay? It's going to succeed in his hand, and he will magnify himself in his heart, and by peace will destroy many. Okay? He's going to destroy many by peace. It's not real peace. Remember, only the true peace comes from Yahweh, and that, of course, is only through the peaceful solution, which is the laws of Yahweh. But through his policy, he is going to destroy many people in order to bring about that false peace. Okay? Now, you see here where it talks about this woman sitting on a beast. Okay? Remember, she's sitting. So what is she doing with sitting? What does it mean, sitting? Judging, exactly. Okay? So she's dealing with the laws of Yahweh. Remember Daniel 7:25, where it says they're going to pass many great laws and so forth, right? And she would think to change these things. And it talks about that cup. It's a famous coin that shows it very well. You can see that the cup in her hand, okay? You see she's got the cross here, and she's got the cup in her hand, and it's got the little sun disk in there, right? And probably has IHS probably written in there. Okay, so the woman with the cup, okay? And she's this woman, she's this system that sits on this beast. And notice what's in that cup, okay? Because what's in that cup is what makes the nations drunk, okay? And that is the teachings. That's that wine. Her wine is the teachings that she presents to the nations. Now, I want you to notice something here of what Yahweh says about that cup as well. In Jeremiah 25, the prophet Jeremiah said, "For this is what Yahweh, the Father of Israel, said to me, take the wine cup of this fury from my hand and cause all nations to whom I will send you to drink it." Now, it's not that Yahweh is saying here, you know, going out with wrath. Remember, the way that they wrote these things in the scriptures is to make Yahweh look like he was evil and that he was the one who was forcing all these things upon it. He's the one who is allowing these things to take place. Verse 16, "And they will drink, and they will stagger." Now remember what they're doing. They're drinking from this wine of the teachings of the great whore. They will drink, and they will stagger, and they will be mad. And this is exactly what you see the nations are today. Because of the sword, which is war, that I will send among them. They're all going crazy. They think the only way that they can possibly, fix their problems is to go to war with one another. In verse 17, "And then I took the cup from Yahweh's hand and made all the nations drink to whom Yahweh has sent me." So this is worldwide. It's global. It's going out everywhere. Everybody is drinking of this cup. They're drinking of the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church. Okay? And that's why they're in the shape that they're in now. "Therefore, you will say to them, this is what Yahweh of hosts, the Father of Israel, says. Drink, be drunk, and vomit." In other words, be completely filled with this stuff to where it just sickens you completely. "Fall and rise no more because of the sword which I will send among you." Now, it's not Yahweh sending out the war, okay? But he is allowing this war to take place through their teachings. And he's saying, you're going to fall and you're going to rise no more. Why? Because Isaiah 2, verse 3 says they will no longer learn war anymore, right? Once it's all over with. But he's got to let mankind learn the lesson. Therefore prophesy against them all these words and say to them, Yahweh will roar from on high. Not like he's a lion, okay? But notice the description there. He will roar from on high and utter his voice from his holy habitation. In other words, he's going to say, now it's time. The wars will begin. It is now time. And he will mightily roar upon his habitation, and he will give a shout like those who tread the grapes among all the inhabitants of the earth. Who does that sound like? It's speaking about you, okay? Speaking about the house of Yahweh. When the time comes and Yahweh says what we're doing today is treading those grapes, warning the nations of the war that is going to take place, then when Yahweh's ready, he's going to say the wars will begin. And that's what he's talking about here when he says, a noise will come from the ends of the earth. For Yahweh has a controversy, which is a legal indignation. Remember, the heavenly courts have already decided what's going to take place. They've already decided that the judgments of Yahweh will take place and his plan will come to pass. So a noise will come from the ends of the earth, because when these wars begin, it's going to be a very noisy thing. All right? And Yahweh has a controversy against all the nations, and he will plead, he will enter into judgment with all flesh. That's what he's doing now through the house of Yahweh, through Yisrayl Hawkins. He is pleading with all flesh to pay attention, to come out of their sins and repent. Acts 3:19, be converted to the laws of Yahweh, be forgiven. And the wicked will be given to the sword, says Yahweh. Now remember, the wicked will never understand. So those who do not understand are going to choose to go the way of war, not the way of peace. And this is what Yahweh of hosts says. Behold, disaster will go from nation to nation, because the missiles are going to be going off from nation to nation, and a giant whirlwind will be raised from the coast of the earth. And that's exactly what you see in the mushroom clouds. And at that day, the slain of Yahweh, not the slain of Yahweh, but Yahweh will allow mankind to behold, by learning this lesson, will be from one end of the earth even to the other end of the earth. It's not going to leave anybody out. It's not going to leave any nations out. Everybody's going to be affected by these things. Not like every nation, every little tiny nation that doesn't have nuclear weapons is going to launch a nuclear bomb, but they're going to be affected by the fact that it only takes one bomb to go off, remember. And the whole earth, the entire earth is going to be affected by the radiation, the fallout, and so forth. Because the wind currents are going to take that and spread it all around, all over the place. And like I said, the great whirlwind, okay? The wind currents will carry that completely all over the earth. And they've known this. They've done studies. They knew back when certain volcanoes went off that it went around the earth and circled around the earth several times, within several weeks. I think it was like maybe 7 times that it circled the earth within 3 weeks' time or something like that. So they know that the wind currents can carry this stuff. And they will not be lamented nor gathered, neither buried, for there will be refuge on the ground. Yeah, they're not going to have to bury them because they're going to be all burnt up. Remember, you saw the different things that took place in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, how that the people were completely just burnt and consumed, right? So it talks about this woman and this beast, okay? And this woman and this beast. And before we go on, let's take a look at the woman and the beast. Now remember, it talks about the woman. Remember what Isaiah chapter 3, verse 12 says. As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. Okay? Women rule over them. There's that woman. Daniel 7, 15 through 18 says, I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit within my body, and the visions that passed through my mind troubled me. And I came near to one of those who stood by and asked him of the truth of all this. So he told me and revealed the interpretation of the things to me. So here's the interpretation. There's no doubt. No one has to try and guess what the prophecies mean. He explains it very carefully. He says, here's the interpretation. These great beasts, which are four kings that arise out of the earth. But the saints of Yahweh will take the kingdom by force and possess the kingdoms forever and ever. Now that's what's going to take place, is because these 4 kingdoms, remember, which is the quartet, which is now, which is a combination. Remember, the Catholic Church being one of the strongest powers that is there, as their major religious force. that will come down, because the house of Yahweh will take control over that when Yahweh allows these kingdoms to come down. And that's when the saints will have the kingdoms of Yahweh and will have control and bring this earth back to where it needs to be brought back. Okay, laying that little bit of groundwork, let's look back here on page 255 at the top now. Now the woman that was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, and having a golden cup in her hand, notice. Remember that golden cup is her teachings of the abominations and the filthiness and of fornication. And upon her head was a name written, Mystery Babylon, the Great, the mother of the harlots, and of the abominations of the earth. Now we're going to cover that and break those words down. This woman, beast, okay? This woman is religion. The beast is government. So this is a state and religion that's combined. And you see that, the Catholic Church pushes that they need to be church and state. They always say, well, you have to separate church and state. No, they teach that it's one and the same. Remember what was said, I think Malachi Martin said. Remember, you can't have a religion without politics. There is no religion without politics, and there is no politics without religion. Okay, so it's one and the same. Because their politics, or their government that they rule by, is by what they believe in. So, if your religion is God worship, then your politics or your government is going to be based upon unjust political laws, right? Unjust laws of God. If your religion is of Yahweh, then your politics, your religion, your beliefs will be of those of the house of Yahweh, which is keeping the laws of Yahweh. So yes, there is politics in the house of Yahweh. Ha ha. Whether people like it or not. Okay. Abominations. Now, this religion and this government is combined, okay? And it's both rich and it's very powerful. And it's a government, which is almost completely against the every word of Yahweh. Now, these abominations, these words are translated abominations here in Revelation 17, 4 and 5, are both word number 946, okay? And they mean a idolatry or abomination, okay? So it's something that's very detestable in Yahweh's eyes. Now, we read an in-depth meeting here in Thayer's. Thayer's tells us that this means it's used of idols and of things pertaining to idolatry, okay? And it also refers to the worship and the impurities that are involved in it. And of course, the next word you see about the filthiness, you think about those impurities that's there, that comes from this idolatry. The word translated filthiness is word 168, and it comes from word 169 in Strong's, and it shows it actually means demonic, okay? It actually means demonic. This filthiness is the filth of the demons, okay? It's the filth of the demons. So you can already see how wicked this religion is, but how deceived the world is that they can't see these things. Now, Thayer's tells us more. It says it means impurity, okay? And then on page 256 at the top there, it shows you uncleanness, okay? And in a ceremonial sense, well, that which is the things that pertain to idolatry, okay? Now, the Interpreter's Dictionary of the Bible, on volume 1, page 647, we read that the demons that cause insanity, remember we talked about this insanity a little bit earlier, okay? This insanity, they actually come from unclean spirits, because it says here, the ways of defilement in the service of the uncleanness are included among the works of the spirit of darkness. The demons that cause insanity are regularly called the unclean spirits in the New Testament, okay? The unclean spirits. And they do. They take over people's minds, and they cause them to do things that are not right. We'll cover demon possession a little bit later. But fornication here. Now, this word translated fornication it also refers to harlotry or adultery or incest or idolatry. Okay, it's pure God worship. Everything that you can possibly think of, the filthiness of the flesh is all included in these things. And that's why Leviticus 18 condemns all of these things. And Yahweh says in Leviticus 20, he says, don't do these things because all the nations that I have driven out before you have already done these things and have destroyed the land and brought it down to the point where it was. And he says, I'm trying to get you in there to clean the things up before it gets too bad to where you won't be able to support life. However, they didn't listen. And now we're in the state we're in now. Mystery. Okay, that word mystery, because remember it says it's the mother of harlots, the mystery Babylon. Okay, the word mystery refers to silence that's imposed, okay, by an institution to religious rites. Okay, now this is done secretly because that's what mystery is. It's secret. No one really knows what they're doing. No one really knows what the Catholic Church is about. No Catholic understands their own faith. See, that's the irony of it. No Catholic actually understands what they worship. They have no idea what they actually worship. If they did, they wouldn't be doing it. But they're kept in the dark. They're part of this mystery religion. Now, Thayers talks about the word mystery, and he shows it means a hidden thing. Okay? It's a mystery. And, of course, that's what the priest will always tell you. It's a mystery, my son. Don't try to understand the Bible. It's a mystery. You know? How can there be God? 3 persons in one God. It's a mystery. Just brush it off. It's religious secrets, it says, confided only to the initiated and not to be commanded or communicated by those to any others. Okay, so part of the intriguing part of these mystery religions was the fact that when you joined, you were told these things. Of course, you had to work your way up to the different degrees and so forth. But once you worked your way up and you really got all the way up to the top and you really showed your determination, your dedication to Lucifer, then, of course, it was revealed to you who you actually were worshiping, and you were even given some even more power and so forth and riches and all this kind of stuff because that was your payoff, you know, because of what you were involved in. But you weren't to expose these things to anyone else. And that's what made it intriguing to other people, because people didn't know what was really going on in these religions. They really don't understand when they go down to the Baptist church what they're being indoctrinated with either when these things take place. Okay, it's also a hidden purpose, a hidden secret. Okay, Babylon now. Babylon in Strong's is number 897, and it's Babylon, but literally or figuratively, it's a type of tyranny. It's a type of tyranny. Now, before we go any further, think about that. It's a type of tyranny, okay? If you were part of this Babylonian system, you were a tyrant, okay? Now, I want you to remember what the Pope's words. Here's what the Pope said, and Pastor mentioned this. BBC News, Pope Francis says, you cannot provoke, you cannot insult the faith of others, you cannot make fun of the faith of others. There is a limit. So what he's saying there is a limit to free speech, okay? That you have to limit what people say. That you can't let them say whatever they want, because now they see the boldness of the house of Yahweh coming against them and exposing them to who they are. Because of the fact that, remember, Babylon, the one who opposes Babylon, is letting it loose. Okay? Praise Yahweh. Now, and then he goes on, he says, if my good friend speaks badly of my mother, he can expect to get punched, he said. And then throw in a pretend punch at the person who was standing beside him there. Now, he already said before, remember, he says, talking to the priest, remember, he says, you're going to get along, but maybe sometimes you might even get into a little boxing match. You know, it's like they're teaching to fight. Now, this is supposed to be the men of the cloth, okay? These are supposed to be the men who are supposed to be leading and guiding the people in religion. But what they're telling people is, it's okay to fight, just, don't hurt the guy too bad so he can still make money so he can give it to the church. But he says, my good friend speaks badly of my mother. I thought, what mother? What mother is he talking about? You know? Is he talking about Mary? Is he talking about the Catholic Church, the mother of all mothers? You know, is he talking about his own mother? You know? You can get punched. Now, that's the way it's always been, okay? He's demonstrating right there as the religious leader of the Catholic Church, he's demonstrating what his forefathers have always done. That's the way they've always solved their problems, is by force, right? Using force. Dictating people and forcing people into doing things by force. You know, this is the same thing that Yeshua, this is the King James Version, which I like because of the way that it says it, but in Mark 10, verse 42, but Yeshua called to him and said to him, you know that they who are counted to rule over the Gentiles exercise lordship over them, and their great ones exercise authority upon them. The lordship, you know, these were the lords, these were the great ones. And you remember, he told his disciples, he says, but you don't be that way. He says, you are not to be that way. Don't lord over the people, you know. Be an example to them. Watch over them. Okay. Now, Babylon, and another number here, okay, the word Babel, where Babylon comes from, 894. Babel comes from 1101. And it means confusion, okay? So this is what Babylon means. It comes from, it's a type of tyranny that comes from confusion. Okay, the people's minds become confused, and so therefore they result to violence. Now, reading from the definition of the Hebrew word, number 894, we read, it comes from 1101 in Strong's, and Strong's is Babel, and it means to overflow, or by implications, to mix. Okay? To mix, to anoint, to confound. It means to mingle, to mix, to give provender, or to temper. Okay? Temper. Now, that word temper, that is an interesting word too, because the word temper means to dilute. This is from Webster's. It means to dilute. And isn't that what they do? They dilute the truth. They dilute the word of Yahweh. To qualify or soften by the addition or influence of something else. Of course, that's exactly what they did. Remember what did they do with Israel? They took the nation of Israel, brought them into captivity, and totally changed their culture completely, right? And they gave them the Talmud. They gave them addition to the laws. And it also means to exercise control over, or to govern, or to restrain. Okay? To restrain. And of course, what do? They restrain the truth from people. Okay? And they exercise control. Now, all this is talking about this word Babel, through this confusion, through the force, through the power that they use. This is Mystery Babylon. The thing is once you got into one of these religions, you didn't get out. Okay? Unless you died. They didn't fool around. Now, Satan's ways, you know, they've always looked desirable, as Pastor writes here. He says, in fact, that's what Yahweh shows in a historical event which took place between Satan and Eve. Remember, Satan and Eve. Now, Eve was the wife of Adam and the mother of all living things, remember? And we read here in Genesis 3, verse 6, it says, so when the woman saw, this is Eve, when she saw that the tree was desirable, okay, it was something that was desirable. It looked great to the eyes. It looked like something that you really, really wanted. And if you remember, the lust of the flesh, the look of the eyes, okay, the eyes connect you to the soul, okay? Connect you deep within. So what you see with your eyes and you take them with your eyes is what's going to be in your heart. Remember? Yeshua talked about that. Okay? So if you look at something long enough and you begin to consume it, then you begin to lust after it. And that's what she did. This tree, or this way of life, remember, it became desirable to her. And it became pleasant, notice. Pleasant to the eyes, and a tree that was desirable to make one wise. Remember what Satan had said. He said, if you become evil like the gods, then you can be wise. Now you know that Yahweh don't want you to be wise. He just wants you to follow his old laws, you know, and he's trying to confine you. He doesn't want you to enjoy life. He's holding back on you, man. He wants, you know, he don't want you to really zazz it up, you know. Come on, let me show you a better way, you know. And she fell for it. And that's the way that people look at it. People think we're boring, don't they? What are you doing, Sabbath? Sabbath? Oh, man. You know, I'm going to the races. I'm going here. I'm going there. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it. Yeah, you're going to spend all your money, and you're going and getting in debt, and you're getting all kinds of diseases and everything. That's a great life to be. Yeah, you're having a lot of fun, aren't you? How long is that going to last? You know, we enjoy life to the fullness. You know, we understand what life is about, but they don't. But to them, it looks like it's boring to us. And so Satan entices people with these things. So it was very desirable, okay? Desirable to the eyes, and to make one wise. And she took of its fruit, and she ate it. She ate that apple. Dad blasted. She ate the apple, man. She didn't have to eat that apple. Why'd she eat that apple? Ever since that, the apples have been cursed ever since. It hasn't been a great tasting apple since Eve ate it. Yeah, that's about the Christians think that she actually, here's this talking snake come wrapping around the tree. It's, you know, you ever see a talking snake, you know, and told her eat this apple. You know, that's as far as they can go. They can't handle any more than that, you know. It's beyond their comprehension. So she took of the fruit and she ate of it, okay? She took of this way of life. She brought forth the fruits. She ate it. She took it into her life. She made it part of her living. And then she also offered it to her husband, and then he ate, okay? Now remember, this is where it comes in that Adam wasn't deceived. Eve was deceived. Adam he willingly just took it. He saw it and said, well, okay, I guess I'm doing it. It was that drip, 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 okay? That nagging that was there, probably that went on, that caused him to just give into it and to do it. And that's why men have an Adam's apple and women have an Eve's orange, right? It's from the curse way back then. Okay, the tree from which Adam and Eve both ate is the tree of the knowledge of righteousness and evil. And the mixture is known as devil worship, okay? It's that mixture that they partook of, that Babylonish way of life that they partook of, and that's what ended up in the spiritual death. That's when Yahweh says, dying you will die. He warned them. So after Adam and Eve ate of this symbolic fruit, which meant that they partook of the way of life offered by Satan the devil, which is always a mixture of righteousness and evil, okay? There's just enough in there to make it look like it's right, okay? But it's evil, because you can't take a barrel of water, pure, clean water, and add a drop of feces in there and say that that's a barrel of clean water. It's not. It's defiled, right? So you can't mix anything. If it's mixed, it's mixed. If it's pure, it's pure. And that's the way that Yahweh is. We're a pure people, right? Now, Yahweh then Yahweh cast them out of the garden. And he says, you know, you're not going to be able to eat of the tree of life by partaking of sin. There's no possible way that you can do this. You've got to learn the way on how to become righteous. Okay, so he cast them out of the garden. Now, the way of life that was represented by the tree of life is the way of complete righteousness. And it's the way of living by the every word that Yahweh has spoken. Just as Moshe said in Matithia, remember, Moshe talked about it in Deuteronomy, and Yeshua talked about it in Matithia 4:4, Deuteronomy 8:3. You know, man will not live by bread alone. He must have peanut butter. No, man shall not live by bread alone. He's got to have butter. No, man shall not live by bread alone, but he must live by the every word of Yahweh, right? It's not just bread. Remember, bread represents life itself, because it's the complete substance of life. You've got everything in bread that is necessary. And that's why nations especially in the East, you know, they're so heavy they eat so much bread and stuff because it supports life, okay? And so he said, but it's not just that keeps you alive. It's by living by the every word of Yahweh. Okay, so the world has rejected, of course, the way of Yahweh, and they've accepted this mixture from the very beginning. And that's what Yeshua talked about. Remember, he says, your father from the beginning taught you these lies, and you believe your father, you know, who's Satan the devil, the father of lies, you know, the one who has taught you these things, the originator of the lie. Now, in Revelation 17:5, we read about the mother of this great rebellion. This word mother is translated here in Revelation 17:5. It's word number 3384 in Strong's, and it means mother. In Thayer's, it means to measure, and it also means to manage, okay, and of that which is like a mother, and then talks about harlotries and that which produces harlots, okay. Now remember, it said that this is the mother of harlots, okay, the mother of harlots. That word translated harlot here in Revelation 17, verse 5, it actually means an idolater, okay. It's one who, you know, it's translated whore in Revelation 17:1. I will show you the sentence of the great whore, which we saw yesterday on the Sabbath, didn't we? Being revealed, okay. It's idolatry. It's worshiping gods, and that's what fornication is. Fornication is God worship, okay. And so when Yahweh talked about when he wrote in the prophets, he said that Israel went to the way of the gods, and she fornicated. She committed adultery against me because she was supposed to be married to Yahweh, okay. But she left her husband. She left Yahweh and she went after the gods. So she committed adultery and went after the gods. But that's why also the prophets, the apostles said, you know, fornication, that you are joined together as one, even with a whore, okay? And so fornication is a sin that you sin with your whole body and mind, okay? It's different from other sins because it totally encompasses a person, and they're totally sucked into God worship at that time, okay? And that's why they're open completely to diseases, which we'll see here, because this word mother, also according to Thayer's, it actually means the source of something, okay? So it's from this mother. The mother is the source of something. It's from this mother where this teaching came from. You remember the woman presented a couple of wine to the nations, and they partook of it. Keep it in mind because the whoredom is God worship. And what did Yahweh say? Yahweh said, do not go back to God worship, right? He brought them out of Egypt. Egypt worshiped every known god and goddess that there was, okay? And Yahweh brought them out of that. And he says, don't go back into it. Remember, he says, don't go back into Egypt. Don't go back to God worship. I brought you out, but they still went back, right? What did they do? The people went back. See that word back? The people went back to worshiping the gods. What did it bring them? It brought them curses of diseases, right? Diseases. And that's what Yahweh was trying to keep them from. So let's see what's going back with the gods brings to mankind. Now remember the popularity of the gods of love. And you remember what the prophet said. My people say, oh, we just love. Okay? Go to a church and they just love you, man. You know the brother. The Lord loves you. Jesus loves you. He died for your sins. And some people don't even believe that the Messiah even died for their sins. The popularity, the gods of love, okay? Let's look at when you look backwards, when Yahweh says don't look back to the gods, Yeshua said put your hands to the plow and don't look back, right? Let's see what their gift to mankind was. Now Webster says Cupid was the Roman god of erotic love. Now we read a lot about all this stuff about the sexual encounters and all that kind of stuff that they did in the temples and all this stuff, right? It says, compare Eros, okay? Eros is the Greek god of erotic love. Compare Cupid. So they're one and the same, right? One and the same god they worship by the temple prostitutes, right? That was their means of worship. Now we know that if you take Eros and you rearrange the words, you come out the beautiful word rose, right? And the rose is the flower that represents love, the erotic love, right? Yeah. Rose. Yahweh says don't go back to the gods. Got it? Don't go back. Take the word eros and spell it backwards. That's what you're filled with. A bunch of sores and diseases, okay? And that's why Yahweh says don't go back to the God worship. I don't want to see you sick. I want to see you full of life, okay? And that's what Yahweh offers. He offers life to his people. And that's why he says, keep my laws. I will bring you out of these things. But instead, the people went back to it, okay? And so that's what these gods bring. That's why all the sickness and the diseases and the STDs are out there, because they have gone back to the God worship. When Yahweh said, try and bring you out of these things, you know, and the sickness and the filthiness, the incurable diseases, that's all we see out in the world today. This is the gift that keeps on giving, okay? The gift that keeps on giving, okay? That's what the gods offer to mankind. That's what they have given to mankind, okay? And this is what Yahweh tries to keep the people out of. Now, all this comes from this teaching of the mother, the great whore, remember. Now, a whore, as you see here in Thayer's, here on page 258, it actually means a woman who sells herself, okay, for riches. You know, I mean, she sells her body for that reason, so she can make a living, so she can make the riches. And she actually sells herself and turns herself into an idolater, okay, a whore, a harlot, one who worships gods. She's given completely mind and body, completely turned over to the gods. And that's what consumes a person's mind, okay? Now, in Revelation 17:5, we're informed about the system called Mystery Babylon the Great, which is responsible for the promotion of God worship throughout the world. And although few seem to realize it, it's this mystery religion, this Revelations 13:1-8 that we read before, is identified in the scriptures. Revelation 17:9 says that she sits upon 7 hills, okay? And the Catholic Church, which is identified as many source references talk about. So the Catholic Church from the beginning until now has brought forth this pagan worship that we know of now that's being practiced throughout this deceived world by these Christian churches. And they're following in the footsteps and the practice of God worship, okay? Which is what we're talking about here. Devil worship, okay? The shocking facts, okay? Devil worship, the shocking facts. Devil worship, the shocking facts. It is shocking too, because when people don't really realize. I mean, it shocks them out of their gourd when, you know, I mean, they really don't understand what they're worshiping. Because remember, they're worshiping this hidden God, okay? It's a hidden mystery religion, and that's why it's a mystery. It's a secret to them. They're so deceived that they don't even realize that they're deceived. You know, and that's why you can see why Jeremiah said that when the time comes, the nations are going to say, our fathers have inherited nothing but lies. And that's all we've been inherited. And the people are really going to be upset, okay? The people are going to be upset because of the fact that they're going to realize they've been taught nothing but lies. That's what they've been brought up in. And this whole world has been deceived. Revelations 12:9. Think of the power that it takes and the power and the authority that Satan has been given to deceive 7 billion people alive on the earth today, except for a small handful. Small handful of people. That's it. We're the only ones on the face of the earth that are not deceived by Satan herself. That is a lot of power and a lot of influence that she has. But all that comes from the mother worship. She is the mother. Okay. Now, she says, now all these Christian churches, okay, they follow her. And they're identified as the daughters, okay, the daughters. They're the harlots. Remember, she's the mother of the harlots. The Christian churches are the harlots, okay? They're her daughters. They're the daughters of the mystery religion, which sits on the 7 hills of Rome. And, of course, this is pagan mystery religion. You know, Yahweh tells us in the scriptures, he brings it out in details about these things, and he condemns this pagan way of worship in the service that they give, because they give this service to Satan. Not to Yahweh, but to Satan. And that's why it's called, what? Devil worship, the shocking facts. Now, through the symbolism in which the apostle Yachanan was inspired to write, we read the practice of idolatry, okay? Now, most people think about idolatry, they just think about, well, this is, I got my little statue. Oh, praise, praise, holy, holy statue. Oh, praise, praise, praise. And I'll sprinkle a little incense and burn a little incense to it and maybe rub a little oil on it, and that's my idol, okay? That's what they think of. They think about these little, oh, you know what an idol is. It's those little things that's on the dashboard of people that go boing, 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 like this up and down. That's their idols, you know. They think of little statues, and that's what they perceive as being idolatry, you know. And they think, I don't practice idolatry. I don't bow down to these idols, you know. Maybe give them a credit card and see if they worship that credit card, okay? But remember, idolatry is God worship, and really, and a god is anything that you put before Yahweh, okay? Anything that's going to take the place of Yahweh, that you think of it more than what you do to the worship of Yahweh, is God worship, okay? And so idolatry is something that the world is really, really sucked into. And so they're worshiping their services to Satan, the devil, through depraved, unlawful sexual relations and demonic war. See, there's a war that's going on. Remember Yeshua said about the war, he says, the kingdom will rise against kingdom, nation against nation, right? Those kingdoms, and even the kingdoms within our own body, is at war. And that's what the demonic wars are about, okay? They're striving amongst themselves to try and compete amongst themselves, to try and take over and so forth. But they're a bunch of lazy bums, too. You know, the gods are lazy. But the thing is that the wars that are going on is wars that they've started already within mankind. They've already started wars within our bodies to where our bodies are destroying themselves. They've planted the seeds and everything and already threw the poison out and got the ammunition already planted in our bodies of mankind. Mankind is dying. That's where the war is. They're warring against mankind to bring mankind down to destruction through this religious worship of worshiping Satan. And the world doesn't understand that. They just don't understand who they worship. And that's why we're bringing out devil worship, the shocking facts, okay? Because it shocks people into reality when you think about it. You know, it's so deep when you realize what Yahweh has offered unto us, and then you really begin to look and you see it and begin to understand the in-depthness of deception that's out there and how it's so easy to be deceived. It's so easy to be pulled just a little bit away. That's why if you don't agree with the house of Yahweh 100%, you are deceived. You see, you can't be 99% believable. You're deceived. There's that mixture that is there of that 1% of doubt. You got to get it out. You got to believe. So, this whole thing, it's rampant in the system of mystery demonism. And the whole world just loves. They just love you, brother. Which has also caused the inhabitants of the earth to become confused, insane, and violent. Just what we see today, isn't it? You see the whole world. They're confused. They're insane. They don't have their right minds. Remember what the guy said? If people were thinking in their right minds, Mr. Pope, they would be praising you for what you've done. Well, I'm not insulting your mother, Mr. Pope, but you're an insult to my faith. Because when you talk about the fact that you're going to say that sodomy is okay when Yahweh says it's a sin, then something's wrong there. We have nothing in common, right? None of us. The house of Yahweh has nothing in common with unrighteousness. And if they think they're going to limit our speech, they got another thing coming, okay? Because the gates of hell are not going to prevail, Yahweh says, okay? They're going to be opposed. Babylon is going to be opposed, and the only way you can oppose something is be able to have the freedom to speak about it, right? Okay, this modern cycle of pagan worship here, the next title here. Okay, it's a documented fact that pagan customs were engrafted into their Christian religion. They were very smart in what they did, you know, because they really, the Christians really think that Christianity is the religion. That, you know, that's a separate thing. And that's the way the history is written, you know. They write it like as if Christianity is something over here that stands for truth, and then the pagans. And even when you read these writings, you can see what they did. But Satan was very clever into making people believe that they were already deceived, but they made them think that what they were doing was even more righteous because of the fact that they went out and they invited these people and took these customs into them and actually did something favorable for them, you know. So we see here in Reader's Digest strange stories and amazing facts. Although Christianity has swept the world in a relatively short time, since it was man-made, remember, Constantine came up with it. But he didn't actually create. He created the title Christianity, remember. Christianity was already in existence. In a short time, the histories of the great religions of the early missionaries faced an uphill task. The pagans were reluctant to give up their false gods. They were worshiping false gods. Not true gods, but false ones. Can you believe it? I mean, false God worship. They should be pure God worshipers. The big G and the little g, right? It's so unbelievably stupid, you know, that you got a false God and a real God, you know. They worship God. And these guys over here worship gods, you know. There's the little g's and the big G. You know, like, what does the capitalized letter do, you know? They're false gods and ancient practices. So they tell you it's ancient practices. It was long ago that they did these things. So the missionaries, unable to convert them easily to an entirely new code of worship. Now notice, this is what Christianity is. It's a new code of worship. It's not a new religion, but it's just a new code by which you are able to perform your religious rites. Okay? Since they couldn't do that, since they couldn't convert them over to it, they did the next best thing. They just took the pagan festivals as they were and gradually grafted the observances into the new faith, okay, into these festivals and rites and customs, and called them holy days. Okay? Holy days. This is their holy days, and this is what it's all based upon, and that's why it's always based upon these things that, you know, it's all based upon death, because the saints are all dead. They worship dead people, and that's what the Catholic Church is based upon, is a dead faith. But it's a mystery. It's a secret. They don't know it. See? They don't know that they're worshiping death. They don't understand that they're worshiping dead people. We're the only ones on the face of the earth. Don't take that lightly, man. Just don't take that lightly. Thank Yahweh every day of your life that you have the understanding that you do, you know, because it's amazing.